Hello and welcome to Ashock the Fourth Wall! It's Halloween time again, everybody! Let us talk of spooks and specters, of slashers and slayings. Let us talk about all of it! Because now Moarte's set is right next to me, and that's all he's gonna talk about anyway, so might as well lean into it. It's the final year we'll be talking about Hellraiser comics. Sure, some could say that the first time, done during the 10th anniversary, didn't really count since it was only a single comic, an adaptation of Hellraiser 3, but the truth is that Hellraiser has a pretty low track record in terms of bad comics. Sure, bad individual stories in some of the anthologies, but overall, not bad at all. Boom Studios had an ongoing Hellraiser series that started off really well, and kind of devolved afterwards into an apocalyptic story, which feels wholly wrong for Hellraiser, which admittedly is also one of the reasons why Hellraiser 3 doesn't work in my opinion. There was also a spin-off of the Epic Comics Hellraiser book called The Harrowers, which was kind of a mix of superhero and Hellraiser, wherein a group of people got powers to fight against the Cenobites. It was kinda neat, but not really what I go to this franchise for. I could talk about any of these books, but they're also really long and not really keeping with the spirit of the type of stuff I cover at Halloween. And frankly, with the exception of the Hellraiser 3 review, we've kind of been bereft of the central figure of this series. Basically, the monster that makes Hellraiser what it is. Pinhead! The anthology's focused on a ton of different Cenobites of varying designs and modus operandi, from the abstract to the less than subtle, and yet not enough is given to basically the face of the franchise. I wonder if Marvel and Epic felt the same way, because in 1993 we got ourselves a 6-issue miniseries focused around Pinhead. As a quick introduction to his backstory in the movies, in case you've missed the Hellraiser 3 review, Pinhead used to be Captain Elliot Spencer, a British officer in World War I who, upon witnessing firsthand the horrors of the war, sought hedonistic pleasure and gratification to escape the trauma. He found and used the Lament configuration, upon which he was transformed into Pinhead, wiping his memory of his former life. However, this comic decides to delve into the Pinhead persona throughout history and expand that backstory for the demonic side of things. So let's dig into Pinhead, number 1 to 3, and see if this story has so many divine pleasures for us. Or if our suffering will be legendary even in hell.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where dead comics rise. Linkara's gonna bring you all a Halloween surprise. Monsters from scary stories and adjacent categories. If you step into his laboratory, you won't believe your eyes. Linkara, he is a man, watch, or is he something else? Linkara, for the last few days he hasn't been himself. Linkara, brains, gore, skeletons and guts. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
Issue 1's cover is yeesh. Like, the Cenobites are all about the pain and pleasure thing, but probably not a good sign when what I'm presuming is a scream of pain looks more like a yawn from waking up. The box. You opened it. We came. Look, I'm sorry. I haven't had my coffee yet. Let's just get going, okay? What's more interesting is that Pinhead has two very different styles of pins on his head. One, the standard nails, and the other, some kind of dart-like things coming out the other side, hinting at things to come in the story. I do love the picture of actual Doug Bradley Pinhead in the corner with an expression that reads, "What the hell am I even looking at?" First pain-packed issue! Oh, well, that's always a good sign, that this issue will bring me pain. The whole cover's art style feels very 90s, and the first page does not help. One of the nice things about the Hellraiser anthology is that it showed a variety of styles. Some more abstract, some more photorealistic, some more traditional comic book art, and some like this, where, much like Pinhead on the cover, apparently the creators thought that people went to Hellraiser to see people's uvulas. Anyway, yeah, we open with this guy getting a bunch of chains sent at him from the Lament configuration. Welcome to Hell, a planned community. Forget all you know about boiling pits of sulfur and crazed imps waving pitchforks. This torment is far more precise in its damnation. You have to sit through ads on a streaming service, and then the video fails to load. Again and again, forever! The narration explains how this guy, Bobby Marucci, obtained the box in Mexico. The puzzle box cost Bobby $3, an unspeakable sex act, and most of his self-respect. What's weird is all three of those can be explained as Nutrigrain bar. Months later, not knowing what the box was, he just casually started playing with it before becoming obsessed with solving it. Leading to now, wherein it opens a doorway for the Cenobites. Weird how in the movies it takes the people who actually want to solve the box like months to do so, but everyone who doesn't give a crap about it figures it out in 30 seconds. Maybe the sex-obsessed ones just suck at puzzles? Pinhead, of course, emerges last as the guy claims he didn't know what the box would bring. All flesh has desire. It only needs to be made aware, given a proper lesson in anguish by a most wicked teacher. They shall assign you all the homework over spring break. Using the box, Butterball starts retracting the chains in Bobby to peel off his skin, but then suddenly the rest of Pinhead's entourage start vanishing. Bobby begins laughing. It wasn't supposed to go that way, was it? With the Butterball, the bitch, the Chatterer, something went wrong. Well, definitely so. After all, how did you know the other two were named Butterball and Chatterer, but needed to resort to sexist insults for the female Cenobite, aka Deep Throat? Where's the order in that, you pin-headed freak? Where's your precious order now? And he slices him up. Restored by way of your evisceration. Making a mess by slicing him in half seems like the opposite of order. There is the stench of chaos. Wait, false alarm, I think someone just microwaved some pizza rolls. We cut to Leviathan, the diamond-shaped god thing that the Cenobites worship. Hell with a view. And it's rent-controlled. A Cenobite, or at least some kind of demon who was once a person named Ludovico Maria Sinistrari, rants loudly to himself near some kind of machine how much he hates working for Leviathan for the last several decades, but that his plan is nearing fruition. In which case, maybe it's a bad idea to loudly rant about it where anyone can hear you. And that's all we needed right now, I guess, because now we cut over to the Temple of Scars. Because even demons pray for some kind of salvation, although they would settle for a working air conditioner. The Hell Priest giving his sermon talks about the idea of Leviathan waging war on flesh itself. The concept being that the piercings and nails and stuff are a ritual that allows them to remake chaotic forms more orderly. I don't know, seems to me like your skin is doing a fine enough job of staying on without driving nails into your skull, but I don't know, maybe they need like a surplus of order to meet the quotas. I want to know what the deal is with this skeleton demon in the background who apparently has his head mounted onto a wall. Was that his choice, or was he like a piece of art that was granted life? The Hell Priest, however, starts saying that maybe they shouldn't be following Leviathan because the Cenobites are disappearing and their leaders aren't providing any explanation for what's going on. Typical politicians, am I right? Unfortunately, that means we are reintroduced to Atkins, aka the worst idea for a Cenobite ever. A grim and gritty, gun-toting Liefeld character, but also a demon. He shoots the Hell Priest's head off and asks what the hell's gotten into everyone that they'd be ready to spread anarchy based on this kind of traitorous talk. The Doomsayer's methods were dubious, Atkins. His message was not. Yeah, but the same could be said of Doomsayer. Doomsay. Oh, right. Atkins is stupid. After some more arguments, some of the Cenobites decide to go find Pinhead and figure out what the hell's going on. They find him removing the pins from his head in some chamber, also spotting a bunch of skins hanging from a wall. One with the darts in his head like in the cover, and one with buzzsaws in there, which is really more amusing because Cabin in the Woods had a Pinhead pastiche who also had buzzsaws in his head. It would appear our leader has played more than one role down through the ages. He also apparently molts a lot. Pinhead, returning the nails back into himself, confronts them, particularly Atkins for his buffoonery. However, before we can see more of Atkins getting taken down a peg, we have a flashback to 1879, where a priest is giving a sermon to a congregation. Afterwards, everyone talks about how eloquently he was speaking, but the priest himself is soon confronted by a demon who berates him for adding on, "Go in peace," at the end of the sermon, since soon the Cenobites will be coming for them, and they need the congregation ready for war. And then it's time for a dream sequence! This one coming from Ludovico. It shows his conception, his father being some kind of person quite literally brainwashed by the Cenobites. Seriously, they opened up his brain for this task before killing himself. After his mother died in childbirth, the young Ludovico solved some kind of elaborate rope puzzle that brought him back into the fold of the Cenobites. That was 113 years ago. He's still paying his mother's hospital bills. Pinhead goes to see Ludovico, having apparently made some deal with him. Finish construction on some project for Hell, and he'll not only be set free, but his youth restored. Pinhead acquiesces to the agreement, and apparently one of the sides that he carries can, make a younger version of you to step out of your old body, since slashing Ludovico with it creates the young Ludovico. However, the guy knows that the contraption that he's built requires that he himself be a part of it, and knew that Hell planned to betray him, so he just willingly puts himself into the machine so that he can still be freed from being Leviathan's slave in death. Not exactly sure what the original purpose of this thing was, unless they always knew the Cenobites disappearing would be a thing, as suggested during the Hell Priest scene where there was apparently a prophecy or something. But it apparently allows them to figure out what the source of this recent upheaval is. Just Ludovico's revenge is that it will actually send Pinhead back in time to it, into his earlier body in 1876. Although this is apparently a typo since everything else says this is 1879. The body with the darts in his head. Apparently at the time, whatever Pinhead was called, he was in the midst of the Sioux tribe's Okipa ritual. Not sure how accurate this is to the real thing, but the point is he's put into his old body. And apparently his previous mind is still there and has to talk to him. His future self explains the situation to his younger self, that Leviathan is threatened in the future by a disorder that undoes the creation of the Cenobites. The younger self understands and agrees, but warns him that because he hasn't been summoned here via the puzzle box, he won't have his full powers. And that if he needs to time travel anymore, other past versions of himself might not be as cooperative. I appreciate your concern. Your psychic dismemberment will be quick and merciful. This is a weird adaptation of Days of Future Past. The crew of other Cenobites have come to the time travel death chamber room, whatever, to investigate what happened. And it includes skeleton attached to a board dude. Apparently its name is Gehenna, and I suddenly want it to be the main character. Face, whom we've seen before and is one of the more interesting of the Cenobites introduced in the Epic Comics, interrogates the remains of Ludovico. Why did he think he was escaping Leviathan's clutches if people can still talk to his skin? Who reveals that this machine will bring Leviathan down. Atkins is Atkins. Prepubescent here is gonna grease these wheels so we can go on a little rescue op and set things straight. Ain't ya, snot-nose? Better do what I say or I'll shoot your torn up bloody remains like all the best Hellraiser scenes! Ludovico warns them that while they could follow Pinhead back in time, they'll be away from Leviathan's power that enables their existence, and thus easy pickings for the unknown adversary that's taking out the other Cenobites. Back in the past with the Preacher, he's busy feeling up a female demon's boobs. That's not even an exaggeration. I have to censor it for YouTube, but what I'm more amused by is that the letterer apparently put the demon's word balloon in the wrong place, so it looks like he's telling himself, "Satisfy your puerile desires so we can get on with the real business of the night." But what are the Preacher's thoughts on demon boobs? I never knew aggregate. I never expected such variety. Okay, as the guy who has the uncensored version, the hell is he talking about? It's just 2 breasts. What variety? Anyway, the demon, known as Aggregate, tells him to knock it off and be ready for the return of a posse he sent out to take the Cenobite that's after them. And indeed, we soon see the posse as they chase after Pinhead. Or rather, those aren't darts he has in his skull, but arrowheads, as they say. The posse are a group of cowboys ready to fight evil, but it seems Pinhead has a collection of other Cenobites in this time period to call upon that are all Western-themed. Snake Oil, Hangman, Fan Dancer, and Dixie. They're kinda neat designs, except for Dixie, because he's just a Confederate soldier without legs and his mouth stitched shut, and screw the Confederacy. This brings us to our next issue. The cover for issue 2 is fine, just shows off the Western Cenobites. With a little help from Perdition's posse. So if they're all Western themed to the point that their group name is like that, what's Pinhead's modern group called? Malignant Matrix fans? We open in the middle of a showdown between a gunfighter and, shockingly of all people, Atkins. Yeah, they actually sent Atkins back in time despite the warning, and it gave him a more period-appropriate motif, with a chain gun fed by the bullets embedded in his skin. It's your funeral, partner! Your funeral and every other horseshit stained cowboy in this boot hill of a town! I reckon this ain't for your eyes! So after killing half the town with that maneuver, his gun jams and he's grabbed by Fan Dancer and Dixie. Realizing they work for Pinhead, he joins the two as they berate him for being so frivolous with the murder and mayhem. Back in the present, the Cenobites gathered around Pinhead exposit what's happened and how the machine was indeed supposed to send someone back in time to try to identify the threat they face. Why a time machine exactly? I mean, it's not a bad solution, just seems like a weird way to solve the problem. It'd be like if I invented faster than light travel to get my wallet I left at a store. Sure, it does the trick, but it's overkill. But in this case, it sent Pinhead's essence back without his full body. Ludovico says that Atkins' own journey into the past will only take him part of the way, and the rest will only be able to join Pinhead during other time segments, and that they're all doomed to failure. I'd question how the hell he knows that, but he invented a time machine that sends a demon's essence back into its own previous lifetime without causing the space-time continuum to throw up all over itself. I just have to kind of accept all this. So back in the past, Fan Dancer reveals that the Perdition Posse, or rather the Sufferers Guild as her group is called, are not actually Cenobites. Are they demons? I really cannot tell. Some of them look pretty skeletal, but in any case, whatever they are, they're followers of Leviathan while not being a direct part of Pinhead's order. As it happens, he's called Scarred Hide here, which is especially odd since Arrowhead actually works pretty well as a nickname in this time period. And they head into an abandoned mine shaft for their base as they hide from the local sheriff and his deputies that have been sent after them thanks to the priest's sermons. We also have some minor character bits for Atkins, reminding us that he was a Vietnam War soldier who became a Cenobite when he solved a puzzle of underground tunnels, showing his reluctance to enter the mine shaft from that. However, any attempts at making Atkins sympathetic are immediately undone by us having to spend any amount of time with him, so good job there. Pinhead is doing his own sermonizing about pain and mutilation while they torture a bunch of their pursuers. He's apparently not at all surprised by Atkins' presence, ordering him to go find the sheriff, since it might help lead them to the enemy they're actually here for. Listen, Scarred, I don't recon with no skirt! You know, for all the hate that the direct-to-video Hellraiser movies get, some of it justified, some of it not, at least they never ever had anything as stupid and terrible as Atkins in them. I mean, maybe Hellworld. We cut over to the Preacher and Aggregate, and thanks to the narration, I finally understand what the hell he was talking about earlier about variety, since this is what it says. The hands of the things calling themselves Aggregate. Yeah, Aggregate is apparently supposed to be some kind of Gestalt entity. I guess the name is kind of a giveaway to that, but it's only now that I get that because we can see a close-up of its hands, where the fingers are the wrong lengths. Except there are no other differing colors or anything to indicate the idea of incorporating different parts or people into one whole. I thought it was just some malformed purple demon thing. Where in the art was I supposed to get their whole shtick? Anyway, after the priest keeps wanting to feel up Aggregate, they slap him away, telling him about some key that will unlock Leviathan and what awaits inside of it. Kind of an interesting idea. The mythos kind of take for granted the fact that Leviathan is a living being, but by all appearances, it's a giant structure. So maybe there's something more to the giant diamond that's inside of that structure. Anyway, Atkins and Fandancer chase the sheriff through the mine shaft. Not sure when the hell they got him in there. As Atkins recounts his backstory to her. He says he never sought out anything like this, but he's the kind of guy who needs rules to follow. You do nothing but question the rules and higher authority. In one of the few ongoing bits in the anthology, you are punished for doing the exact opposite of what you were supposed to do. 'Cause I get the job done, they look the other way and let me do it my way. You don't, though. You are an embarrassment and failure in everything we see with you in it. If this franchise revolved around you, it'd be called Hellsinker. Speaking of the anthology, apparently they decided to call back to the first issue, the one I covered last year, with that brief but pointless story involving the card game for the Lament configuration. And some commenters apparently thought that I didn't understand the story, the idea that the most valuable thing on Earth was his life free of the Lament configuration. No, I got that. It's just that it seemed kind of pointless because nothing happened in that story. It's like, yeah, you could have had horrible demons and torment and pain and evil, but nah, I'm just walking away without you even knowing what could happen. Bye! Anyway, to show off how every other character is far more interesting than Atkins, Fandancer tries to convince the sheriff to join up by offering a softer pitch of the Cenobite way of life. Sensation, experience, getting to feel things far beyond what a normal human life can offer, but the sheriff just feels he's failed as the town protector and commits suicide despite Fandancer's attempts to save him. Still, he tells them that it was the priest who set them on to their group and where they can find him. As the events from the anthology story play out and finish up, back in the present, we start learning of what exactly the threat finally is. Someone is altering the history of the Cenobites. And next up is the guy who played that poker game in the anthology story. If his puzzle is taken away, every Cenobite who was created after that point by him will vanish. Which I guess explains why they needed a time machine in the first place, but how did they know they would need one? Especially how did they know they would need one 100 years ago when they first got Ludovico to start building the thing? And indeed, in town, the priest uses the Book of Leviathan to transform that poker player into the skeletal dragon demon thing from the first movie that took on the form of the homeless dude, a guardian of the Lament configuration. It shoves the priest aside before he can grab the box, but then Aggregate attacks, saying that they've done their time in hell and are going to ensure that everyone has a chance to escape it. However, before they can use the box, the Perdition Posse attack and fight off Aggregate. Aggregate manages to kill Hangman, Dixie, and Snake Oil, and by the time the others get to them, Atkins starts vanishing. You're becoming no more, Cenobite. That configuration was part of your origin, and what we have done here has disrupted that pattern of creation! Oh no, so terrible. Aggregate reclaims the box and runs off, but gets their foot stuck in some railroad tracks. They claim that they know Pinhead. Conveniently, a train is happening by, and Aggregate tells Pinhead to go after them as they get hit by the train. Kinda disappointed that Aggregate didn't have purple blood, like some demonic version of the Grape Escape board game. With nothing left here, Pinhead says his farewell to Fandancer and, I guess, quantum leaps into another past form, this time in Paris of 1728. It's the Church of Saint Medard. The magistrate and one of the priests, Father DePage, await the arrival of a representative of the Vatican to investigate strange occurrences at the church. And said representative is Pinhead, who apparently has much more ornate pins in his head in this time. The Holy Father sends his greetings. Sorry if I seem a bit grumpy, this carriage has a low ceiling and it keeps pushing these things in deeper. That ends issue 2 and brings us to the last issue we'll talk about today. Cover for that one shows Pinhead apparently attacking this earlier incarnation. Not a bad cover, though it gives us a better look at this incarnation. No segmented scars on his head, and he even has facial hair. I think it's called an Imperial? Anyway, we open back in 1879. Apparently Balbereth, the librarian Cenobite we've seen before, has traveled back to help Fandancer collect the remains of Aggregate. Really all we get is Fandancer giving her backstory, except there's no point because she's gone from the story after this. I don't know, maybe this is referencing another story from the anthology? It was a couple years ago I read all these, and there were a lot of stories in those 20 issues, so it's hard for me to remember them all. Anyway, yet again, she has a more interesting story than Atkins, and Balbereth just tells a more edgy version of Sleeping Beauty to her for no reason other than padding. And it's not surprising that we need padding. Someone decided that these individual issues should be extra length, 28 pages each, despite the story not justifying that added length. Anyway, Balbereth now travels back in time again with the remains. At the church, the Pinhead equivalent, a Monsignor, observes various miracles being performed in the churchyard. One is that a poor woman with an infected wound on her leg has said wound licked, and the leg instantly heals. Another is grosser, vomiting milk as fine as that produced by any cow. Okay, but who was the one who decided, you know what, I'm going to try this woman's vomit to see if it's like fresh milk? The occurrences began after the previous former leader of the parish was buried, Deacon Francois de Paris. Before the Monsignor can investigate further, Pinhead's essence is transferred into him, and, as warned, he's not welcomed by the Monsignor, who thinks this is some kind of trick. After yet another exposition recap for those back in hell, Balbereth arrives in 1728 to help Pinhead with his mental struggle, appearing in the guise of a nun. This holy oil, it has curative properties. It's also great for pan-searing steak. The oil empowers Pinhead and allows him to take control, though his body is tired from the experience, and Balbereth takes him away. In the courtyard, a woman puts her face right in the middle of fire and tells the father who had sent for the Monsignor to seek out Aggregate at the Rue de Revanche to get the answers he seeks about all this. Balbereth shows the parts of Aggregate to Pinhead, indicating that none of them match from the same person. Though Pinhead points out that this isn't actually particularly helpful information, since it's not like Leviathan is hurting for enemies who would do something like this. In the meantime, they believe that the miracles in the churchyard are actually a puzzle, much like any of the more abstract summoning devices for Cenobites, and in turn, solving it may be connected to Aggregate and their mission. Also, we've got yet another connection to one of the stories from the first issue of the anthology. The priest we had seen earlier, Father Jean de Page, is apparently a descendant of the baby left behind by Father Robitaille. Yeah, I pronounced it wrong last year, I'm not French. And Lady Carillion. And said descendant is now struggling to understand if these miracles are good or evil. I swear to God, I did not plan for the story to connect to last year. I didn't realize there was any follow-up on stuff from the anthologies in this form. It's kinda neat, even though it feels more like pointless fan service than anything significant to the story. Balbereth studies a story that was in the deceased deacon's possession about a boy who tricked the devil via transformation, eventually turning into a wolf to eat the devil while he was in the form of a chicken. Story, Deacon de Paris? Or parable? Mostly just the lesson, never transform into a chicken, for they are tasty. Put the pieces of grain together, and they become a mischievous boy. Put the pieces of body together, and they become a piece of grain! Of course! Father DePage travels to Rue de Revanche and finds Aggregate, who's hiding their appearance behind some bandages and gloves. They show him a crap ton of cats that they've murdered, because cats serve the devil, you see, and promises to help reveal the truths of good and evil to him if he joins forces with them. Balbereth, in the meantime, shows Pinhead what she thinks Aggregate is after, a puzzle configuration known as the Pellucid Lens. If you place the interlocking crystals inside of it the correct way, it casts a beam straight to hell. It's of personal significance to Balbereth because it's the puzzle that led her to becoming a Cenobite. Unfortunately, the conversation gets quickly tabled as as Aggregate arrives and easily overpowers Pinhead, lacking the infernal magic that he would have if summoned by a puzzle, plus lacking any kind of posse to help him shoot at Aggregate this time. Before he can use a blade to fight back though, the Monsignor on the Mentalscape returns, apparently playing out some porn version of Red Riding Hood where Pinhead becomes the titular Red Riding Hood while Monsignor plays the wolf, and they're supposed to have sex or something at the end, but first Pinhead as Little Red Riding Hood has to eat some of the dead grandmother too?
This is weird!
Anyway, point is that Aggregate and Father DePage open up the Deacon's tomb and find the pellucid lens in it. In the Mindscape, the wolf eats Red Riding Hood, but that just allows Pinhead to infect the Monsignor and take control again. Balbereth disappears due to time changing with the lens, and Aggregate teleports away, probably back in time. Oh, and I'm guessing the whole getting hit by a train thing was just more of a mild inconvenience for them, because hell magic or whatever. Otherwise, they never explain how they survived that. Pinhead recovers, and DePage is left wondering what the hell just happened. Pinhead notices the necklace that DePage wears actually holds one of the focusing crystals of the pellucid lens, meaning the puzzle is incomplete. He hand waves that the miracles were caused by the disparity of energies between the configuration and its missing element.
Using multimodal reflection sorting.
He takes the necklace and travels back in time once more, ending the issue with his form in Mayan times, the warrior Topek. These comics are a mixed bag so far. I would not call them horrible, but this plot is just bizarre. Time-traveling demons trying to stop another demon, and occasionally we get some philosophizing about the Cenobites' purpose. I'm not sure how keen I actually am with stories like this, where we see so much of it from the Cenobites' perspective. There was some of this to a degree in Hellraiser Judgment, which I liked, but there was still a primary narrative of human characters driving events, versus this, which is just, oh no, the bad guys might get undone by other bad guys. Feel bad about it. And honestly, it's hard for me to be upset when Aggregate's mission also ended up unmaking Atkins from time, which I am all in favor of. Still, the world building is top-notch, diving head deep into the demonic way of, well, life, I guess is the term, despite them being what they are, with characters in these stories having pretty well thought out backstories and character motivations, even though they're not going to be seen again. Tying it back to the anthologies is very clever, because even if it doesn't amount to much, it lends some weight to this whole world that was created in the epic Hellraiser comics. Next time, we'll see what it is Aggregate is after, and how far back we'll be doing the time warp with Pinhead. There is the stench of chaos.
Teenagers.
Good evening, I'm Chief Meteorologist Robert Barker for the 1049th Contest of Champions News Service, and I wanted to give you an update on the developing situation at Tenlum Stadium. This just came in. The Temlins have announced that the anticipated Battle of the Entertainers wrestling match between champions Linkara and Heavy Rex has actually been postponed due to current conditions at the stadium. Let me actually take you up to the maps here. You can see this area we've outlined in red here. This is actually a severe ion storm warning for this whole area here, and that's the storm in question. Now, I know the Temlins have a long-standing policy of not interfering with the weather, But personally, I think this storm justifies a little interference, because you can see it's not really moving. It's just sort of developing back on top of itself as it moves off to the northwest. You see this? I'm not really sure when tonight's match is going to be able to be rescheduled as long as this storm remains in place. And, hold on. I am hearing we have a temporarily displaced version of myself as a field reporter out there in the field near Temlin Stadium. Me, can you hear me? Yeah, Bob, I got you. We're in a lull in the storm right now, but I gotta say, this has been one of the more intense storms I have ever seen. Wind speeds are reaching the high end of the ionic scale. What's really annoying is how we keep switching universes. Not the actual storm. This here is the reason why the show was postponed, I think. Now, we also have to warn that overflow from hypertime may result in dimensional crossover. So unfortunately for anyone in the path of this storm, all I can say is avoid accumulating events and avoid travel around Temlin Stadium as best you can. I repeat, avoid, no, hang on, I gotta do this again. Cartoon again. All right, back to you in the studio. Oh boy, I am not looking forward to being temporarily displaced for that report. But really all I have to say is take your proper ion storm precautions in and around this area. We'll continue to monitor the situation here, but for now, I'll go ahead and return you to your regularly scheduled programming. I'm Chief Meteorologist Robert Barker for the 1049th Contest of Champions News Service. Stay safe out there.
What the hell? Hello my friends, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon or purchase a t-shirt via Teespring or Shark Robot. Thanks for watching!